Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Finn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Providence St. Vincent Medical Foundation. And on behalf of the foundation, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm pleased to introduce Nancy Bryant, who will be our host for the event today. Nancy, along with her husband, Andy, are members of our board of directors and co-chairs of the fundraising campaign to renovate and reimagine the emergency department at St. Vincent. Nancy?
Welcome, everyone. Today's presentation, No Time to Wait, Reimagining Emergency Care for Tomorrow, is part of a virtual speaker series that brings our best and brightest clinicians to you so that you can learn about how revolutionary care, research, and community support projects, all fueled by philanthropy, are bringing the best in care to more patients throughout Oregon. Today, we're going to hear about the challenges that St. Vincent's Emergency Department faces and the innovative ways we've come up with to address them. The renovation and new approaches to patient care that we're going to be talking about are remarkable. They'll mean better, faster care for everyone who comes through our doors. For better or worse, our family has had extensive experience with the emergency department, from our grandchildren who've been to the pediatric unit to middle of the night events for pneumonia, deadly sepsis, heart and possible stroke issues for my husband and me. Every generation in our family has been there. We've also experienced emergency rooms around the country, and the very best care that we've received has been at St. Vincent's. We want to make sure we keep this care available for our families in the future, for our community, and for all the patients who we serve in our outstanding heart, stroke, behavioral health, and other excellent programs, who often find themselves at one time or another in our emergency room. But honestly, right now, we're struggling, not with the quality of care we provide, but with the capacity to provide that care. There's no better person to tell you about all of this than our guest speaker, Dr. Ray Moreno. Dr. Moreno has built his career around emergency medicine. He's now the Chief Medical Officer of Providence St. Vincent's Hospital. But prior to this, he served as the Medical Director of Emergency Medicine at St. Vincent's. Dr. Moreno has been the driving force behind this renovation project. Together with his team, a new emergency department is being created to address the needs of today and to plan for what's to come over the next 30 years. Dr. Moreno?
Thank you, Nancy, for that kind introduction, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm going to do a little sound check and a screen check here in just a moment. So give me just a moment to make sure that I am sharing my screen here appropriately. All right, and I just want to confirm that folks can see that first slide.
Yes, we can.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. All right, well, welcome everyone. And indeed, the title is No Time to Wait, reimagining how we provide emergency care in the future at St. Vincent. And we're going to talk a little bit about the need, the opportunity, and the plan that we have. And as we reimagine RED, we're going to start with the need, and we're going to start with something that we're proud of. As some of you may know, St. Vincent's is a wonderful destination, a terrific destination to get care here in town. But what some of you may not know, that it is ranked as one of America's 50 best hospitals. Now, this ranking system is through Health Grades, which uses publicly available data. We don't apply for this. We don't submit anything. It's looking at publicly available data, and it ranks our hospital in the top 1% of hospitals nationally. Now, it's the third year in a row we've been recognized this way. We're the only hospital in Oregon who's had this distinction, and only one of 39 that have received this honor 3 years in a row. So maybe we could be the top 39 instead of the top 50. But that's the background of the facility and the place where so many people get care. And so the emergency department, or the ED, is the front door for accessing all this wonderful care. 82,000 plus patients, the busiest ED in the Portland metro area. And many of you know that we are a destination for heart and cardiac care, brain and stroke, OB, behavioral health, pediatrics, and many more. But in addition to these services that people come from far and wide to use, we're also the community hospital for Portland Metro's West Side, for adults of all ages and for children. So we really are the front door to the hospital, and we are the community hospital for this part of town. And so there's a daily experience of demand versus supply. And you'll forgive, this is a little bit of a wonky graphic. There are numbers behind there, but I've purposely blurred them off because the numbers aren't as important as what I want to share with you. So this is midnight going through to the following midnight, and this is Sunday going through Saturday. And every day between noon and midnight, there is a sea of red where there are more people who need beds than we have spaces to put them in the emergency department. So we're crowded. This leads to crowding. It leads people to wait longer than we would like them to wait. It leads us to having to turn ambulances away. It leads patients making the decision to leave the lobby. People are unhappy, both the patients and our staff, and we worry about safety. So how did this happen? Well, a lot has changed since the 1990s, and RED opened in 1994. Now, remember, the 90s was the era of Clinton, Kitzhaber, and Kotz, if you think of politics here in this area. And ED volume back in 1999, it's the last year I was able to get 100% reliable data, was just shy of 60,000. It was a little bit less than that earlier in the 90s. And then in 2022, 82,000. So clearly we are seeing more patients than we were back then. But it's not just more patients, it's more work, more complexity per patient. All of the data that we look at tell us that our patients are older, they're sicker, and they're more complex than they've been in the past. They are sick enough to be admitted to the hospital more often, and they come by ambulance more often. Now, there is quite a bit of data underlying each of those statements. I'm going to share just one little piece of data. And I'm sharing it because people have this conception, well, couldn't people seek care elsewhere? And I will tell you that it is not the easy patients, if you will, that are crowding the emergency department. So back in the 90s, 20% or 1 in 5 of patients were kind of lower acuity, more straightforward patients that could be seen in other settings like an urgent care, straightforward back pain, earache, sore throat, complaints, simple cuts or lacerations, simple orthopedic injuries. And over time, that has gone down dramatically with the explosion of options out in the community. And that number is now below 4%, which is a very low number for an ED our size. So we've gotten busier and things have gotten more complex in the ED. So I get asked lots of questions about the ED. And as Nancy said, I was the former ED medical director, did many, many years of shifts down there. And now as the CMO, I think of the whole building. And folks have asked me, what do you lose sleep over? And if you could fix one thing in the ED, what would it be? Well, to me, I think of this mismatch. And I think every day of how there are more patients than beds to put them in. And these are all great worries for me, but there are 2 worries I want to address in particular. Ambulances getting turned away and patients leaving the lobby. All right. So we've been turning more ambulances away as we've gotten fuller and busier. And in 2022, we saw 1,300 fewer ambulances than the year before, 2021. Now that's a pretty big number, but each has a story. And there is a friend of Providence, a patient of mine, a patient of ours, that received all of her care here and needed to be diverted twice. She had received all of her cardiac care here and needed to go elsewhere and didn't get her care here at St. Vincent, the place that she knew, the place that knew her, where her cardiologists and caregivers knew her, and a top 50 hospital. So ambulance is turning away. We're turning away our patients We're not serving the community as well as we could. This is something I really do worry about. So now let's move to patients leaving the lobby. And there is this misconception that people who poke their head into the ED, see that it's full, and then they leave, that maybe they're not as sick, maybe they'll be okay. And I actually looked at data in Oregon across Providence, and some of these patients come back. So again, these are people who check in and then decide to leave the lobby before being seen by a doctor, before having a complete evaluation. About 15% of those folks come back within 72 hours, within 3 days, and 2% of those folks are sick enough to be admitted. Again, it's really hard in scale to know what that means. 5,000 patients, 2% come back and are sick enough to be admitted. But every person has a story, and some of these are quite serious. So I looked at this data, and in this one bit of data, I looked at the cases, literally one by one. And some of these cases are pretty serious, sick enough to be admitted. Now, we'll start with something reasonably straightforward, someone who came in with shoulder pain, and then they came back 3 days later, their shoulder had been dislocated for 3 days. So they suffered unnecessarily because of that. There was a person who came in with fever and came back 3 days later with an infection around their brain and spine, meningitis. There are folks who come in with belly pain, and this is a variant that I saw several times in the data, and they come back several days later with a perforated bowel or a blocked bowel or a ruptured appendicitis. And that data that I looked at was all across Oregon, but some of these cases are ours. So folks who leave the lobby, some of those folks are pretty sick, and we really have lost that opportunity to care for them if we can't make space for them. So we've talked a little bit about the need, and now I want to talk a little bit about the opportunity. So why now? Well, the need is there, but we had some help to get things going. We had a generous patient who got us started back in 2019 and gave us some resources to start the planning process. And this patient had a wonderful experience, and I will paraphrase the conversation I had with her. My interpretation, not her words, went something like this: love the doctor, love the nurse, love the care I got. Boy, this space is crowded and tired. Maybe you can do something about this. So that was one thing that kind of helped get us started. Another thing that happened is that right on the back wall of our emergency department, there was an empty space that had recently been vacated from our pharmacy, which had needed to be upgraded and moved. And then finally, why now, is that we got expert help. We did robust planning work over the course of several years. And we engaged an expert group called the Huddy Group. And this group had done work to design over 300 ED projects, and they're experts both in operations and designing emergency departments. And they literally wrote the textbook on emergency medicine. So I have this book on my shelf, and met Huddy and worked with Huddy. Our team worked with them here. We had a team of dozens of people who worked on this project. So when Huddy got here, we had some questions for Huddy. Well, are we doing enough now? We wanted to make sure that we felt that we were undersized. We felt that we were being as efficient as we could, but we wanted an external expert to say, could we be more efficient in the space that we have, or are we really undersized? And Huddy's opinion, having looked at this and having looked at all of our data, said, yep, you're doing a pretty good job right now. You're a reasonably efficient ED for as big and as complex as you are. But we also have the humility to know that there are some opportunities that we could take advantage of. We're already doing that. Another question that we had for Huddy is, well, are we going to get lucky? Will crowding get better in the future? And sadly, his answer was, no, it's probably going to get worse. So other questions we asked Huddy, well, let's go back, and do we have enough space for these patients? Again, we went to the efficiency piece, we looked at our square footage, and Huddy's answer was no, you're undersized now and very undersized moving forward. And so we asked Huddy, how do you know this? We know that you've worked with and designed over 300 EDs, but how do you know? Well, part of it comes down to demographics and modeling and simulation. And their team has created simulations that have predicted what's happened in other EDs in other settings around the world. So part of the issue that we're having is population growth. So I want to show you this little map. So Here is the Portland metro area. That X is us at St. Vincent. And 75% of our emergency department visits come from zip codes, from these zip codes, from this area. So you can see that 75% is here and westward. Now, mind you, the rest of the 25% is all these other areas here. And looking at population alone, 6.5% population growth over 5 years. But the thing that is interesting that drives ED utilization as well is that the fastest growing segment of that population is folks who are older. You can see that between 65 and 74 years of age and almost 20% growth, and 75 plus a 26% growth in that population. So putting this all together, you're looking at what do you expect is going to happen to the ED volumes. You'll recall that I told you we're about 83,000, and we're projected to grow to 100,000 patients by 2040, 100,000 patients by 2040. Now, we know what happened in COVID. This is the pre-COVID number. Here is the post-COVID number. Emergency departments all across the country and the world saw a decrease in census, a decrease in people who came to get care in 2020. So HUD planned and did these projections looking at our older baseline, pre-COVID, and our newer baseline, post-COVID, and then gave us a range. And this data run was done in 2020. And here was the prediction for what would happen in 2022. And our actual census was directly on what HUD told us it would be a couple of years ago. So this projection of 100,000 visits seems like a pretty good one. Okay, so we talked about the need. We talked about the opportunity. Oh, yes, is there a question? Was that you, Kevin?
No, I think that was just inadvertent.
Okay, great. All right. So we talked about the need, we talked about the opportunity and the data. Now let's talk about our plan. So the plan is to expand and reimagine the emergency department. And it's not just new spaces, it's new spaces and new workflows. But it's important that we work on every space, old and new, so that there is a consistency to the department, and the people who are providing care down there know where the equipment is in every space, where the lighting is, where the egress, the getting the in and the out and moving patients around. So it's very important that there be a consistent design, a consistent flow throughout the department. And we had some principles guiding this work. Well, we weren't going to do this work if we couldn't get more space, so capacity. We really wanted to maximize safety. We really wanted to be flexible. And this exciting piece is we really wanted to be on the cutting edge of innovation. And we had heard about some of these ideas from HUD and the many, many departments he's worked with. We had already been doing some things that were pretty innovative, and we're planning even more. So when we look at this, this all fits into this new design. And this design, this graphic is purposely small, and it's very hard to look at it from above and know what that means from before and after. So I'm going to guide you through pieces of it here. But suffice it to say that as we reimagine the ED, we really reimagined how you enter the ED. That's a really important part of the process. We have increased capacity. We've gone from 58 rooms to 84 spaces. We've increased capacity for adults, kids, and behavioral health, because all of those are needs moving forward. Fortunately, you don't need all of those at the same time on any given day. So we've built in this flexible capacity, which you're going to hear about in a little bit. And we've added equipment and spaces for doing the diagnostic tests that we need to do. So there are many, many design elements to this new department. I'm just going to focus on two. And the first one I'm going to show you is the entrance, reimagining the front door. So currently, I'm going to go back. Most folks come in through the side here. And what happens is they interact with staff where this little red circle is here. Okay, this is our current entrance. It's a shallow entrance. You come in. And then what happens as the day goes on and things fill up, here are all the patients in the public and lobby spaces. So most of our staff are here. The patients who can't be brought right away are in places where the staff don't have a direct line of visual sight to them. And that's a safety issue. That's something we do a lot of things to mitigate it. We have a lot of rounding in our lobby, but it's something that gives us worry and concern. In the future, we move the entrance from here down into the corner. And the staff that meets you here in green will be able to see you as you're coming in the door and see you in the lobby. But I'm going to give you even more detail here. So here is a new workflow for what I'm calling a no-wait ED. Now, no-wait is catchy. There will be some times you can build an ED that will handle 100,000 on a given day. There would be enough patients that if every other day were the same, it would be 150,000. There are always going to be days where things are busy, but this is a design that we've created to minimize waiting, dramatically minimize waiting. So the walk-in entrance is down here in the corner. When you come in, you will meet our nursing staff and get a first look. Now, usually there was one workflow for this. You'd get a first look and you'd go back to a bed in the main emergency department. The dilemma, as I've told you, is that there's more demand than there are spaces on many days in our current space. So we now have an alternative destination. For those who need to go back right away, we get them back in the main ED. But for many patients, we're going to move them into something called the arrival zone, an innovative area where you can go from the front into this room. You can see a doctor, you can see a nurse, sometimes a doctor, get blood work going, x-rays going, EKGs going. Tell a little bit more of your story in an area of privacy. And once we know more about you, sometimes we say, boy, we need to get you back into a room and lying on a stretcher. Sometimes, very few times, we're going to have you wait a little bit of time in the lobby. But many times, after you've been in the arrival zone, we move you over to results pending, an area that we have where if you just have one test, let's say it's an x-ray and you're able to walk okay, you come into the arrival zone, you see a provider, they order the test, you wait for your results there, and from there, you can be discharged home. So it's a very, very innovative model for providing care, which allows those folks who can be mostly vertical to spend less time in the emergency department and get their needs met. Now, why do we think this will work? Well, cutting edge places around the country are doing it, and we're actually trialing it right now. So this arrival zone concept that I showed you in the previous graphic, we're doing a little bit of it right now by using our lobby. So there's a piece in our current lobby, as you can see, where we have dividers, temporary spaces, and we are doing this because it's really full, and we're trying to be very creative and innovative about getting patients seen. And since January 9th, when we started doing this workflow of something that looks like the arrival zone, but in the lobby, 15% of our ED patients are being seen through this area and getting their care expedited. So that's a little bit on how we're redesigning the front end. Another piece I want to share with you is flexibility and flexible care areas and what that means. So this middle area is a flexible area. Well, what does that mean? These rooms are specially designed so you can see adults, you can see children, and you can see behavioral health patients in them because they have all the necessary equipment up against the wall. But if we needed to make this room safe, we can drop this special door down and all these surfaces are safe for someone who is at risk of self-harm. And you can see in this drawing that this flexible zone links with all of these areas. And so I want to highlight one link about what the flexible zone can do for us, and it has to do with children, and it has to do with children in behavioral health crisis. So many of you may be familiar that we have a dedicated pediatric area, dedicated pediatric ED, children's emergency care area. So this area is a big square, if you will. And on the back end of that wall, there happens to be our current staff areas. So as we go through the course of the day, patients come and check in. Now, as I'm populating this graph here, this graphic, the blue patients are patients who might have asthma or an injured arm or belly pain. And the green patients are those who are having behavioral health complaints, depression, anxiety, issues with kind of behavioral disturbance. And as you can see, we try to keep folks in different spaces to maximize the care for each of these folks and have a good environment for each of those folks. But as we move along, as the day fills up and it fills up, things get crowded. And we go to this little area here in the corner. And in this area, we have a mixture of behavioral health patients and non-behavioral health patients. And we have staff and family members. And I will tell you as a parent, as I was caring for patients into this space and you walk in, it is very, very difficult for everyone to have someone in a behavioral health crisis and someone with asthma or belly pain in the same space and maintaining a good environment for everyone, maintaining everyone's privacy. The staff downstairs do it because they're fantastic and they're great and they work hard at it, but it is very, very challenging. In a future state, what we're going to do is that we're going to take this staff area here, and it is part of our flexible care zone. And when we do this over the course of the day, there will be a direct link between this area and the rest of the pediatric area. And in this area, we can keep our more general medical patients in an area and directly adjacent with our excellent staff, be able to put behavioral health patients in an area that is close, that is pediatric focused, but allows us to kind of give each group of patients the space that they need. So flexibility. So I'm coming now to a close, and I want to share a few thoughts about our vision. And our vision goes beyond a graphic that's kind of hard to grasp when you're seeing it on a two-dimensional screen. It goes beyond these beautiful images of what this space will look like as you're arriving, as you're coming into the waiting room, where our staff are, and for imaging. It goes beyond that. The vision is really beyond these visuals. It's really a vision for better, faster care for more people. And for us, this means flexible new spaces, innovative new workflows, and serving the community, especially our most vulnerable and high-need patients. So, as we look to the future, we have this way of thinking about this project where tomorrow is really starting today as we reimagine emergency care. So I want to pause for a moment. I've got a little 3-minute video I want to share with you, and I've got to get all the sharing done correctly. So just bear with me for a moment before we move on to questions, and I can share this video with you. So give me just a moment here.
Last night was a very busy night here in the emergency department. I came on as the morning doctor and heard that at one point they had 54 patients in the waiting room, with some wait times being 6 and 7 hours. We try our best to care for patients as timely as possible, but sometimes, unfortunately, there are long waits when we don't have enough space back here in the emergency department.
Washington County has grown a lot, and so because of that, we see a lot more patients, and we've outgrown our space, and so we can't effectively care for these patients anymore in the manner we would like to. That's why we really are desperately in need of a new space.
Our goal is to always give efficient, high-quality care, and with the new layout, I think we'll be able to do that to a much better extent than we are now.
This morning, I've had a child with a forearm fracture. I have a few patients right now with abdominal pain. Another person who fell down and required some stitches to be placed for a laceration. So it really covers all different types of pathology on a daily basis. A little more pneumonia. We are kind of the MacGyvers of medicine here at the emergency department. So we found a space to be able to care for patients, and we're able to do an amazing job. But with our new department, we'll have a resuscitation bay right next to the CT scanner, so there'll be more privacy and then immediately adjacent to get that life-saving intervention. This actually used to be a linen closet. Currently, I'm caring for a patient whose heart is beating very, very fast, and so it does require an intervention here in the emergency department where we will help shock their heart back to normal. So that's what's next. Hey, it's Diane. For bed 3, what's our ETA for the cardioversion?
The emergency department's a really big and busy place and can be really overwhelming for patients of all ages, but especially for kids. It's so important for us to have a safer, more kid-friendly location for them.
Let's refill you the inhaler. Let's get you started on some steroids. I also have patients that are here with hip pain, abdominal pain, a rule-out heart attack, a patient being admitted for a stroke, and then kids who have fallen off the monkey bar with arm pain.
When we see someone, it's probably their worst day. So I'm grateful that people in the community are interested in making this a better place for our patients. It means a lot to know that people are invested in that.
The new emergency department will have more storage space, so we'll be able to get rid of some of the clutter here in the emergency department to make it easier to run a code and take care of critical patients. Currently, we have ultrasound machines that live at various places around the emergency department. Here, we're just kind of putting it in an alcove that's out of the way, but we're very excited to have dedicated storage space for all of our equipment. With a larger mental and behavioral health patient population, we want to have rooms that will keep those patients safe when they're experiencing a crisis. Our new rooms will have pull-down garage doors that will mitigate a space to make sure that they would not be able to harm themselves, and also allowing good visibility for staff to be able to care for them, and also a focus on staff safety as well.
I would say that in the community, Providence St. Vincent's is kind of known as the premier hospital to go to, especially the emergency department. Now would be the time more than ever to donate because the future generations need this department.
Your support of this campaign will help create an emergency department that you know will be there to care for you and your family members, both now and years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. Thanks for all the great information today. And thanks for information. We've done our best to show you the space and talk about the need, but I have to tell you, nothing beats actually seeing the space in person. So you'll have information at the end about how to take a tour of the ED, and I hope that you'll take advantage of that. I noticed that we have a couple questions in the queue for you, Dr. Moreno. Are you able to answer a few of these questions live?
Sure.
Great. I'll turn it back to Kevin to facilitate asking those questions. Kevin?
Thanks, Nancy. And just a reminder, if you would like to post a question, just use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. But we did get a few questions in advance of today's presentation. So Dr. Moreno, one person wrote and said, all of their doctors are at St. Vincent, and that's where they receive all of their care. Wouldn't an ambulance take them there since it's closest to their home and that's where all of their current physicians are located?
Yeah, so thanks, Kevin. The dilemma is that there are times when there is literally no capacity and there is something called ambulance divert, and we're not unique as an emergency department having to declare that state. We do all these things that we can to try to stay off of it. But when we do, the patients will need to go to a hospital that is open. So that would be another hospital in the community. So it's unfortunate. And I think you can always ask and you can always talk to the ambulance folks about, are you sure? Can I please? I really want to go there. But there really are some times where there really is not any capacity and our patients have to go elsewhere. And vice versa. Other emergency departments patients wind up in our emergency department as well.
Thank you. Another question is, a person heard that a friend had to wait over 5 hours in the emergency department before they could see a physician. How is this project going to address the long wait times that some people experience?
Well, thanks, Kevin. So a few things. One, more space is more space. So the more space you have in the back, the less people will have to wait out in the lobby. But I also wanted to take us back to those graphics I showed you about the arrival zone, which is we are doing that so that we can get to people more quickly. Now, it may be that you don't go to a room in the back right away, but we can get a nurse to you, we can get a doctor to you much sooner with this design. And as you saw from those pictures I showed from the lobby, 15% of our patients since January 9th have gone through that area. So we're getting practice on how we would use the new space. But the whole reason we're doing that is to get to people more quickly. People come here to see a doctor, to see a provider. And that's the single most important thing to your care, is to get somebody who can really make decisions about what tests you need, if any, what treatments you need. And we are committed to shortening that time. And that's part of why we're having this design.
So we've gotten a couple of great questions in the Q&A button there.
Sure.
The first one is, what's the timeline for the renovation look like, and how is that going to impact patient care while construction is going on?
Yep. So the timeline is it's about 2 years. Our hope is to open the new ED fully in 2025, and we spend months and months working on what's called a phasing plan, because unfortunately we don't have an empty space across the street where we could build the new ED and just move on one day. We actually have to work out of the emergency department as we're expanding it and building it. And what I can say is that lots of people and big teams have been working on this to minimize the amount of rooms that come offline. And as we do construction, it's phased in such a way that capacity increases. So we're emergency department people, as Dr. West said, are like the MacGyvers of medicine. We can figure out how to take care of patients in a construction area. So.
Another question in the chat there is, given that 15% of cases seem to be more urgent care type of conditions, is there an opportunity to create a nearby urgent care facility so that some of those patients can go to that setting rather than come to the emergency department?
Well, Shandy, I'm glad you asked that question, because it lets me know that I wasn't clear enough about that piece. So in terms of the 15% of people who are going through there, they are starting their care there. So for the vast majority of those folks, they might be going there and then going to a waiting area where we bring them back for results. Some of those folks are starting their care there and then come back to a regular ED bed and even get admitted from there. So that 15% is the analogy of the arrival zone, is that there are some patients whose care you can start while they are vertical coming in and interacting with them quicker in a different way. Some of those patients for sure will go home. Some of those patients may get admitted. Some of those patients will get a very, very big ED evaluation. Some may not need much of an evaluation. So this 15% is really what we've been able to put through this analogy, this analog of what we're calling the arrival zone, which is this vertical care concept that we're doing in the lobby. The urgent care volume has mostly left. Early on in the talk, I said about 1 in 5 of our patients could have been seen in other settings, and that number is down like 4% or so. So obviously that it's always great to try to get that number smaller, but 4% is a pretty low number, and I hope that helps.
So I think we have time for one more question,
Sure.
Dr. Moreno. This is similar to the first question I think that we started off with, and this question is, if a person did have to go to another hospital in an emergency, maybe the St. Vincent Emergency Department was full, ambulance had to bring them to another local area hospital, how would they access care from the specialist maybe that they have previously been seeing at St. Vincent? So maybe they're a person that has been receiving their regular heart care at the Providence Heart Institute, but the ambulance needed to take them to a non-Providence facility here.
Yeah, and I think how they access those folks is by phone and Epic and other means, right? Because it's most physicians in 2022 in this area work in, primarily in one hospital, sometimes several, but in general, they work in that place. So if you were to say, go to another facility in the county, whether it's Kaiser down the road or Tuolumne or Meridian Park or another place, they have doctors in those places who will be the people primarily caring for you, and your doctors here at this hospital don't work in those hospitals. So, all of us in medicine try to coordinate care and talk to each other and call people's primary doctors, but there is no substitute for being in a place where your doctor is, where their office is literally across the walkway or in the same building. You're not going to be cared for by the same folks who do take care of you. Now, we do this work. I saw something pop up on the chat for the transfer center. Absolutely. So we do work to try to bring people back to us if they wind up in other places. But wouldn't it be great if they didn't go someplace else to begin with? If we could get you here from the very beginning. So.
Well, thank you, Dr. Moreno, and thanks for all of your great work on this important community project. If you were inspired by today's presentation and you'd like to get involved and learn how you can help, please feel free to connect with anybody on our foundation team. My information is on the screen, but I also saw in the chat that we posted some opportunities for you to get involved and see firsthand some of the work that we're doing in the emergency department space. And those tour dates are also on the screen, and you can feel free to reach out to Kate Callahan to arrange for a time to come in, and her email address is also posted. So thank you again for joining us today, and have a wonderful afternoon.